2026 Board of Education meeting to order. Nikki, please call the roll.
Nikki Austin, present. Jim Curran.
Present.
Mike Davis.
Present.
Mike Process is absent. Nicole Josephs.
Present.
Teresa Keen.
Present.
Steve Mayer.
Present.
Terry Montgomery.
Present.
Bill Vosper.
Present.
Quorum in session.
We have quorum in session, ready to go. First item up is to approve our agenda for tonight. I entertain a motion to approve the agenda for the January 5th, 2026 Board of Education meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mike Davis, second by Nikki. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Next up, we have our consent items. Give board members a chance to take a look. Is there any item that a board member would like to remove from our consent agenda? Hearing none, I'd look for a motion to approve the consent items as presented.
So moved.
Had a motion by Terry, second by Steve. All in favor, or actually, let me read these for the record. Okay, we got approval of the minutes from December 8th, 2025. Approval of professional staff retirement, Melody Leffel-Holtz, the family and consumer sciences teacher for the high school. Approval of 3 support staff resignations, Juanita Cutler, custodian, Monroe High School, Chandra Depri, executive assistant at the DAC, Scott Harm, custodian at Northside Elementary. And approval of support staff hiring, Megan Hulverson, instructional assistant at Parkside Elementary. And we've got community donations to approve for tonight. Looks like we've got several of them. Holiday meal bags for Parkside families donated by the Dillenberg family. Holiday meal bags for Parkside families donated by the Parkview Junior High Destination Imagination Team. Winter clothing donation to Parkside Caring Closet donated by the Union Presbyterian Church. $1,000 gift cards to local grocery stores donated by Karen Breutzman and family and Chris Sukup and Bumgartners. Kiwanis Club donation of 20 shovels to Northside Young Leaders Club and our Backpack Buddies program. $120 from the Read Between the Lines Book Club, $30 from Mary Johnson, $300 from QPS Employment Group, $5,000 from the Community Foundation of Southern Wisconsin, and $200 from Share Moving and Storage. Any discussion before we vote?
Yeah, if I could, well, mainly in Mike's absent, I'll say thank you to everybody for all the generous donations. Again, it just absolutely impresses me every time we go through this. And I'd also like to say thank you for the individuals that are retiring and resigning. A lot of time, a lot of years put into the work and the effort, and I'd really like to thank all of them for their efforts. So, thank you.
Just echo a little bit, I know Melody's been with us for over 30 years, so it's quite a long commitment for teaching in the district. So.
One thing about Melanie too, if anybody had a chance to read her letter, the poem at the end, it's been a long run, it's been a lot of fun, but the time has come, June 5th, I'm done. That pretty much says it all. I loved it, so kind of tells you what kind of person she's like. So.
That's right. I've got a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the consent items as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. All right, we're on to public comment. We've got 2 folks signed up tonight. I'll give just a little bit of kind of instruction and framing here. So for anybody who signed up, you've got 5 minutes. Couple of asks of us. One is that you stay kind of on topic for something related to our agenda for tonight. 2, that you keep your comments respectful. And 3, just please recognize that this is a public meeting and there won't be any kind of two-way dialogue. So we have public comment for the purpose of the board listening. But there won't be a period where our board kind of engages or asks questions or anything like that. We may incorporate it into something from tonight or in a future meeting, but we're really just here to hear from the public during this public comment. So that's the purpose of this time. So with that, Alex Ramirez, you got the floor for 5 minutes.
So my name is Alex, and I'm a new Monroe resident, having moved here from Sun Prairie last year. As newcomers, my husband and I are deeply grateful for the support our family received, especially from the teachers who helped our youngest child adjust to a new middle school environment. Coming from a larger district with its own share of issues with said school board members and superintendent, as well as referendums and controversies, I wanted to share 2 points for consideration as you approach the upcoming April referendum. For the state funding and advocacy, the superintendent has mentioned several times that the lack of increased state funding for students is a significant challenge. I believe it would be helpful for residents to understand what steps the district has taken to increase our state aid. Additionally, what are the district's plans for 2026 to reach out to state senators, representatives, or even the state superintendent to advocate for Monroe's needs? Transparency and these efforts would help the community feel informed and involved. Secondly, the athletics and community supports. There has been discussion about whether cutting sports would save money for teachers and other district needs and the potential repercussions of such actions. Looking ahead, could the district outline what athletic programs will be offered at the new high school and clarify if donations have been made for athletic fields, and if so, in what amounts? Sharing this information would help residents understand how many sports will be available, how costs might be offset by donations, and providing closure regarding the high school's future, as well as for the proposed Bank of New Glarus that's going to be in the new high school, if they are going to be paying rent to the district, as well as the utilities for the bank. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And next up, I've got, can't read the name exactly, but I'm pretty sure that says Dave Mosher.
Thanks, Jim. From your guidelines, I don't think I can say anything. However, I wanted to come in support of the school district, the board, in this difficult time of a referendum, because I've already heard the negative comments, and I know there's going to be personal attacks, which is just a shame. And I know people are talking from their billfolds, and I hope you can express to a lot of people that, you know, your education is never paid for. If there are people that are saying that, oh, I don't have any kids in school, I already graduated from school, why do I have to pay increased taxes? It's a pittance that people pay in property taxes their whole life for their education. So the way our system works, I get it. You have to pay for the past. And the more people that realize that you're not paying upfront what your great public education costs, the more they realize that I have to keep the system going to not only support what I benefited from, but for what the next child benefits from. So keep up the positive attitude. Joe, your information to make it completely visible has been wonderful. And that is the other thing. Don't fall into all this negativity. You've been out there, you've been very public, and the information is there for anybody that wants to really look at it. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate folks for signing up and sharing your perspective with the board tonight. I'm gonna keep us moving. We've got no student liaison tonight, nothing for old business, so on to new business. We've got 6 items for consideration. We're going to start off with some more exciting news. Another sponsorship. Turn over to administration to tell us about it.
We do. We were fortunate to be contacted by representatives from the Campion Fund, the Monsignor Thomas F. Campion Fund, who was exploring ways in which they could be a part of our new Monroe High School project. As everyone knows, Monsignor Campion has a longstanding history in this district of having served individuals with disabilities. And after some discussion by their board, they decided that they wanted to provide $75,000 to sponsor the special education room at the new high school, specifically Donna's room. And so the way the new high school is going to work, and we're excited about this, it's not going to be set up as it is in the current high school, where we have a collection of special ed rooms in one area. Instead, things are going to be integrated. We'll have some breakout spaces. But for the population that Donna serves, for those students that have some significant disabilities, there's a lot of needs, equipment needs and space needs. And what the Campion Fund has asked to do is to sponsor much of the equipment and assistive technology that'll be in that program. So unlike many of the other sponsorships that we've had, where those dollars are going to be invested, these dollars will be used for specific equipment that will be provided from day one in that program. And we couldn't be more thankful. In some cases, that offsets some of our budgetary requirements that we already had in place, and in some cases, that'll allow us to maybe get some things that otherwise wouldn't have been possible. And so we're very thankful to the Campion Fund, specifically Shirley Knox, that took the lead on making sure that this could happen. I think it's just another example of the generosity of this community, and we couldn't be more excited about what that program is going to continue to do for kids and families, and also the message it sends to our community about their desire to take care of all kids.
Well said. Great. Any questions for administration? I just want to echo the gratitude that Joe shared. Monsignor Campion was a huge part of this community, and it's really incredible to see his legacy live on and continuing to support so many kids and families, including through this donation to for our new high school project. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the Campion Fund lifetime sponsorship for the new Monroe High School special education classroom.
So moved.
Motion by Terry, second by Steve. Any discussion before we vote? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, next up, we've got building project update. Turn over to administration.
Yeah, I can start a little bit if you want. I think we're at a pretty exciting time with the project as we get out there. The building is truly coming together in a way that it looks and feels like a school. There's a lot of finishes that are going in right now, whether it be, you look at the classroom spaces where the flooring's going in, the trim, the sills, the whiteboards, the monitors are being placed. So that's exciting to see those learning spaces come to life. As you look at other areas of the building, we have the field house has the gym floor is currently, it was stained and in the process of being finished with the detailed painting and then some finishing coats that'll go on. The Performing Arts Center, there's a lot of work going on in there, and they're getting ready for an additional pour that will allow the seats to be installed eventually. And then the greenhouse is also being erected as we speak, not to mention the concession and press box out at the softball, baseball complex. So a lot of good work's going on. I would say that over the break, it was a little quieter than normal. I was able to get out there a couple times, but we're feeling good about where we're at with the project and the schedule. So Ron, anything you want to add?
I think, I'd say the only thing is, on an average day, not excluding the break, we're still usually over about 100 people a day out there. And we have been for quite some time since we got extensively into construction. So, that's the fortunate part of having a lot of those boots on the ground coming in and working within our community. Some of them live in our community, but some of them are traveling in here to work as well.
So in terms of schedule, we're still feeling good that April's the general completion date. There's a couple things that we're working on.
Yeah, the April is the completion date for kind of the substantial completion of the building per se. We'll still have some outside stuff going on. We'll look at the spring weather as to when it makes sense to do those final couple lifts on the driveways and parking lots, when we'll do the final laying of the track surface and the tennis court surfaces. We have time, so we don't need to rush those and try and put them in during bad weather. But as far as the majority of the building, yeah, we'll be That'll be there, and then obviously, as I've said all along, that doesn't mean the building's done and ready to be moved into, because we have kitchen equipment, meaning, for serving students, as well as tech ed equipment and all kinds of, the phone system and all kinds of things that are incorporated in our current high school that we're moving over into the new high school. And so there'll be a lot of that going on throughout the rest of the spring and into the summer. Because some of it we obviously can't move until we're done with the school year.
Thanks for the update. Questions from the board for administration?
I don't really have a question, Jim, but there continues to be inquiries about tours. Is April still kind of where we're at?
Yeah, we had a conversation about that this morning. We have our weekly meeting on Tuesdays tomorrow. So one of the things that Ron and I are gonna talk about with the team is how to realistically pull that off. We're eager to get the community in and allow people to see all the good work that's being done, but we need to balance that with any challenges that provides for the crew, and ultimately, they're responsible for the building until they turn it over. And if we come in and some things go wrong, then it's up in the air as far as who's responsible for fixing that or correcting that issue. So we're confident that we're gonna be able to figure something out, and it's our hope that we'll get people in there early April, but we wanna confirm some things prior to making that promise. But I would say I've heard the same questions, Phil, and we are extremely excited about getting the community members, staff in there so they can see what the building looks like. I think they're gonna be proud of it.
Ron, do you have any update on the lift station when that's gonna be up and running? They'll come to it.
We've been continually monitoring that. I know they were, DNS actually had been on plumbing out there over the last couple of weeks, doing some of the, working on the well set for, where they're gonna basically, it holds everything that goes into it, right? And then it pumps it up to the main 8.5 Street. And then you can kind of see out there, if you go out there now, you can kind of see where they were working on some of that laterals that are gonna go up toward 8.5. So the hope is, I think the thing with the longest lead time they're battling right now is the generator for it. And so they're hoping kind of to have it, the holding tank set and in place, and have some of those laterals in, so that if we do need to connect to it, even if it's not actively working, we could connect into it for temporary this spring and utilize it as it is, and then they would pump it. But we're hopeful that we won't have to have any large, system flushes that will be producing large volumes of water until the point in time when they may have the generators available. But I'm gonna say it'll probably be closer toward late spring, right, by the time it's all said and done. So
What are we doing now?
right now, it's still is and will be throughout construction, porta potties for the most part. And so the only thing that really comes into play is when they have to, when they get ready to fire up the HVACs and they have to flush the system. And then what we do is we are pumping that into our laterals that go down and terminate in a manhole short of where the lift station will be. And then Munson Septic's been pumping it out. And so BNS will be, has taken on the responsibility that they'll be covering the pumping that's needed from, as we move forward with the time, because they were hoping to have theirs in place by January. So, and we didn't make it. We're not gonna make it, I should say. It is January now, I guess.
Thank you.
Questions? Okay.
And then obviously we'll have representatives from C.G. Schmidt and Huffman Keel at our next meeting to give you more detailed updates on what's going on and how things are going. But overall, we feel really good about it.
Sounds good, okay. So next up, we've got two action items in 8E and 8F that are the resolutions pertaining to the referendum for this spring. But we wanted to do is create some space prior to that, both for administration to kind of recap. I know it's been a while since our last meeting, so I wanted to recap just kind of the,
Education Center first.
oh, sorry, I'm skipping, sorry. Got a little excited there. Take us back to 8C. We've got a new topic for tonight. I'll turn over to Joe to talk about this. We're gonna, there's no action for tonight, but this is just kind of the first part of a conversation about the board and the district considering the sale of the building that we are sitting in right now. I'll turn over to Joe to bring us in.
Yeah, so I think this is a good example of how the board is really trying to respond to any kind of feedback that we get in the community. And we've had a few people, at least a few people in the community that have asked the question, as well as some sitting board members that have asked about the use of this building, the costs associated with facilitating and operating this building, and asked the question as to whether or not we should consider the sale of the building. And frankly, that's due to our budget situation and knowing that we're going to the community and once again asking for our referendum approval in order to realize an operating budget that will allow us to do the many great things that we're doing. But I think from the perspective of those that have asked the question, if we are asking the community to authorize a referendum, we should do our due diligence to look at all opportunities to save dollars and potentially sell assets if they're not being used. So I think just to give a general overview of this building, I've been in the district, this is my 28th year. This building has been owned by the district far beyond that. It's been used previously as a district administrative center. It was used as a charter school for some time, and currently it's used for a couple of different things. Well, sparingly for sure, it is used for a couple of different things. One is we're here tonight because our Board of Education meetings are held here. We do have some of our larger professional development trainings that are held in this building. It's used for alternative placements for students that have some behavioral needs that are best served outside of a school where other students are in attendance. And we can talk about that in more detail as the board desires. And then, frankly, it's used for quite a bit of storage capacity in the lower level of the building. So really what we wanted to do tonight was honor some of those questions and those requests to provide the board an opportunity to discuss the idea of potentially selling this building, discuss what that would mean in terms of a potential sale value, operating costs, what impact, if any, that would have on the district, and then start to get some direction as to how we might want to proceed with the sale if that's something the board desires to do. So with that, I'll open it up, and I know at least a couple of board members have some thoughts related to this issue. So at this point, I'll turn it over to the board to ask those questions.
Maybe start with the summary. You talked about the operating costs and do you know what those are?
We do, yep. Those are provided in board docs. I can pull those up, and I don't know if you want me to read those off so everyone listening, but I won't bore you with all the details. But if we asked Rich Zentner, our Director of Buildings and Grounds, to pull together the average annual cost for operating the building. If you look at water and sewer, gas and electric, fire control, our fire extinguishers, snow removal and salt, pest control, all together that results in about $14,000, a little bit over that annually to operate the building. And so the majority of that is in gas and electric costs. But we wanted to provide that. There are some other maintenance items that come along with that. Whenever you own a piece of property, there's upkeep. Most recently in 2021, we put a new roof on this building. That should last 30 years, but that was at a cost of just over $26,000. And then the exterior was painted because it was desperately needed. And that came at a cost of $13,000. So just to give everyone an idea of what it takes to operate the building. I know there are times when it doesn't feel like the heat is on in this building, but our utility bills would suggest that they certainly are on. And it's a unique building. I'm not from Monroe, so I don't have the history that maybe some do, but my understanding is this is kind of an old strip mall that has been renovated to meet our needs. And for those of you that have been through this building, there's a lot of different spaces that were set up as individual storefronts and individual bathrooms on the backside. But it's served our purposes and served us well, and we've had some success with the things that we've done in this building.
Questions, comments?
Do we have a good option for all the things that currently take place in here if we were to get rid of this building?
To some extent, yes. Let's break that down a little bit, Steve. So one thing I should have mentioned, and maybe Mike was trying to prompt me on this, so I apologize. One of the things that I did before Christmas break is I visited with a local real estate agency and asked them to provide a value, an approximate value for this building. What we were told is that, you know, there's a bit of a range, but they said 600,000 was an approximate value for the building, which, to be honest, it was higher than what I anticipated, but I think Gary's working on it. So that piece is out there. I think, you know, that's an important piece of information that we needed, and I was thankful that Exit Realty provided that for us. I think going back to your question, Steve, you know, when we look at the breakdown of how we use the building. So first, Board of Education meetings, yeah, we could potentially you find another space to hold these meetings. So specifically, when we look at the new high school building, I think it's getting worse.
Shut it off, I'm sorry.
Throw it on the floor.
I'm about ready to.
In the new high school building, the Launch Collaboration Center, the Thrivent Launch Collaboration Center, could potentially serve as a place where we could hold Board of Education meetings. So I think that checks that box. And I think honestly, regardless of what's decided by the board about this property, I would probably recommend that we consider that the new high school is going to be obviously our newest and most modern building. The community has made a significant investment in that facility, and I think it makes sense to use that as a place to bring the community together whenever possible. I think when we look at professional development training, this room was renovated to give us a nice large space, so we were able to spread out when we have upwards of 50 people come together and do a training. We could do some of that in the buildings. Our LMCs provide large space for those types of trainings, and given the fact that our LMCs are not staffed and utilized to the extent that they once were, they're probably available more so than they were previously. So I think we certainly could consider using our building LMCs for that purpose, as well as, you know, again, the collaboration center at the new high school when schedule allows. I think that the one that's probably most concerning to me, and some of you have heard me say this, is, you know, in my prior role, I was director of pupil services for a long time. And one of the responsibilities that I had was to work with the schools to provide programming and space for students that weren't able to be successfully served in the school setting. And so more specifically, when we have students that have behavioral needs that result in more aggressive or violent behaviors, there's times when it's just not safe to have some of those students in our buildings. And so what we've done using this building is provided an alternative placement where we're able to tailor everything that goes into that program around that student's needs, help them regulate themselves, help them trust, help them develop relationships with adults, so that ultimately we can build their skills, build their trust, build their desire to be back in the school environment. And I can say without a doubt that we've had tremendous success doing that. We've had a number of students that would no longer be served by state residential care centers, mental health institutions, that would literally be kicked out and wouldn't be accepted by a variety of programs. And we have no choice. As a public school, we have to serve all kids. And we were able to provide services to those kids in a manner that not only help them stay in their home school, but also eventually integrate into the regular ed classroom and ultimately graduate. And that's something that, you know, out of all the things that I've done and will do in my career, that's one of the things I'm most proud of, because it took kids that many said couldn't learn and couldn't be successful, and we helped them find a way to be successful. So the benefit of this building as it relates to that is it allows us to provide a space where the students' needs can be honored without having to impose some of the needs of a building where you have hundreds of kids. And by that, I mean, we have some safety considerations when kids are in a building, and ultimately if a student is dysregulated and becomes aggressive, we would potentially have to use seclusion and restraint in order to protect those that are in the building. And that's something we've worked really hard to avoid. We've significantly decreased the number of seclusion and restraint incidents in our district over the years, and we feel really good about that. And part of that is because when kids have needs, we do it in an environment that's safe, that won't potentially impact others. So is that to say we couldn't come up with some other options? There's a lot of districts that do it in a variety of ways. I feel good about the way we've used this building, but it would be disingenuous for me to say that's the only way to do that, right? Like you could potentially look at creating another space within a building, but you'd have to be very careful about the access to that building with the students that we're talking about. The other option is that when you have to serve students with significant needs, such as those I was just discussing, many, if not most schools, utilize a private school to serve their needs, and that typically costs upwards of $150,000 annually for one student. And because that includes the tuition to the program, paying for the staffing, usually an aide that works one-on-one with that student, and then transportation costs, which we typically used sparingly in the past, a couple times over my time here, the Richardson School in Beloit. And as you can imagine, employing someone to drive someone back and forth in the morning and in the afternoon and pay for the vehicle, the gas, the insurance, everything, all of that adds up to well over $150,000. So
We throw a question at you.
please.
Yeah, I've got a few too.
That's really important work, and I understand that.
Yep.
From a purely fiscal standpoint, I mean, how many kids per year
Yeah.
do you utilize this building for? I mean, it's a $600,000 asset, you
Yeah.
know, we're using for storage and meetings.
Yeah, I think it's an important question. I think, you know, the answer is currently we have zero. We're not serving any kids in here, but there's been times when we've been served as many as, you know, 4 or 5 kids down here at one time, where we had to stagger it and space them out across the district. So I'm thankful that we're not at a place where we need to do that. And I think what you just said is absolutely true. Given our budget situation, we have to consider the fact if we have a $600,000 asset that we might be able to benefit from. I think the board has to take that into consideration. I just want the board to have their eyes wide open that in the not too distant future, we absolutely will have students that have similar needs, and there will potentially be a cost for us in some way. And I'm not saying that to try and influence or, you know, deter people from making that decision. I need folks to know, because the way the special ed budget is set up, the state doesn't provide enough funding to truly fund special education. And if we have a $150,000 hit to the budget, that comes from Fund 10, usually in the form of a interfund transfer at the end of the year. And so that hits our fund balance, and there's some real cost there.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and maybe the answer isn't tonight, but I think have to look back to you and your staff. Is there an alternative, you know, within the facilities that the district has, not including the Bauer building, and without having to send kids away to private schools, not just from the cost, but I think they're better here under the care of our staff, you know, to get them back into the mainstream, for lack of a better word, I guess.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is, could we potentially come up with something? Absolutely. We got a lot of smart, creative people that could figure that out. Will it have some challenges that we don't have here? Yes, because I think anytime you're serving students with that level of need, you know, one of the things that has worked well for us here is that it's absolutely limited access to other students. And I think in essence, what we're suggesting is providing those services in a school where there are other students. So, but yeah, I don't want to suggest that that's impossible because it could be done.
Would we have enough parking space if we did not have this parking out here? Because I know we have the parking by the brewery, but is that enough space for all of our teachers to park?
I don't know do you know how many spaces we have in that lot, Ron?
I don't have the count off the top of my head.
There's roughly 70 over here. And there's about a dozen on the west side.
Did you
of the
count,
school.
Steve?
I just walked through it, yeah.
I just imagine Steve out there with some chalk Xing off spots. I love it. Love their field research.
Across the street. We own that. lot
We do.
across the street.
We do, yeah.
So it's roughly 70 over there.
Well, I was gonna say with using the whole lot, we should be
Okay,
pretty okay.
because I know this lot is packed every single day, so that's why I was asking that question.
It would be tight, but I think for staff during the day, we'd probably be okay. I think when we have some events, that's when it becomes more challenging, whether it be something going on in the auditorium or sports, anyone that's come to a middle school event, especially, you know, on a Friday when Bullets is open and doing their thing, it gets a little tight and people are parked down the side streets. But we do absolutely own the lot across the street. But parking in this part of town is at a premium. Nikki?
Do we serve K through 12 in this building when we have those needs, or is it middle school and up, or what?
It's all levels. Yeah, we've had children as young as kindergarten all the way up through high school. And so, again, that's the benefit of when you have kind of a blank canvas, we can create a program that meets the individual needs of that student. It's typically not, usually it's middle school to high school level kids, but there's been a number of elementary kids that at times have had to be served here. And we've worked really hard to make sure that those students get back in the mix. And I'm kind of smiling right now because I'm thinking of a couple kids that are doing really well at the high school that was part of their history and their story.
Well, I guess the reason I'm asking is I think as these kids get older, they get far stronger. They're bigger and they're stronger, and if they're out of control, I think that my concern is the safety of other students then, if our only option is they're just back full-time in each of our buildings.
Yeah, you know, to be fair, we wouldn't do that. We've always emphasized safety as our number one priority. And so I don't want anyone to think I'm suggesting that if we sold this building, that students with those type of behavioral needs would just be thrown back in the mix. We wouldn't do that. We would have to come up with an alternative that we could provide, given some space that exists, kind of like Phil was suggesting. There may be limitations on that, so it might put us in a position where we may have to use a service such as the Richardson School a little bit more than what we've done in the past. But we wouldn't do that. We wouldn't just say, nope, sorry, we don't have any space, you gotta keep them there. Wouldn't be fair to, you know, the students that we're serving in that capacity, their families, our other students, our staff, our principals. So, I mean, we remain committed to maintaining safe schools. It would be a different space consideration for us, different alternative placement option.
I think it's a really important question, Joe, because, you know, if we use what you're saying, the Richardson School, if that's $150,000 per year per student that goes there that we're paying for, you know, if our building sells for 600 and if you have 4 kids that have to be sent there, it's a wash. So I guess it's a pretty important question, not necessarily to be answered tonight. But could those same services we're providing now be done within the other facilities that the district has?
Sure, so if,
And as Nikki said, in a
Yeah.
very safe fashion, we certainly don't want to put any staff or
Yeah.
students at risk.
yeah, and please know, I know that's what the board is saying. I know that none of you would ever suggest something of that nature. If what you're asking is, could we come up with a potential proposal as to how that might look or work? Yep, we can, I mean, that's Amy's area right now, so, you know, we certainly can work with Amy and the principals and discuss options and what that might look like to provide more information for the board. We'd be happy to do that.
Do these at-risk students, do they attend same hours of school that all the other general population does?
It depends. Typically, no. Usually we have, them on a modified schedule because what we've learned is if you put, doesn't matter the kid and their needs, if I take Steve Mayer and Joe Monroe as your teacher and you have to listen to me for 7.5 hours in a day, you're gonna be sick of it after a day or two, right? And so, as much as Steve and I get along, right? So instead, what we do is we modify the schedule to make sure that we're addressing the things that they need, both academic and social emotional learning needs, so they can start to realize some success, build some confidence and come back. So typically, the students are with us anywhere between 2 to 5 hours, depending on the student, their age, their needs. Typically, when students go to the Richardson School, they're there for a full day, in part because they offer a full day program, but also if you're transporting them, you know, all the way there, you know, it doesn't make sense to turn around a couple hours later, so. Good question, but yeah, it varies depending on what we think the
And
student's
they go
needs are.
the same school days, Monday through Friday?
Yep, absolutely.
Realize it's somewhat unpredictable, right? You can't tell when this is gonna happen, but give us kind of an idea, like, when is the last time you've utilized this space for that purpose? Like, was it?
Last year,
Okay.
yeah. And so you're right. I mean, it'd be hard. We could probably go back and look over the last 5 years and identify the students that were served here in some way and give you some kind of count, but in some ways that doesn't, I don't know that would provide the information you need because there are years when we haven't needed to use it at all. And then, like I said, there's years when there's been a lot that's happened. And, you know, if you want to ask Amy a little bit about what the last few weeks have looked like with enrollment and some special ed needs that have come in, there's some stuff out there. And frankly, part of the reason why we probably haven't used the building as much this year is because we've had to make some reductions in special ed and we're really tight. And so we're exploring every other option before we go that route, but if it gets to the point where we feel it's unsafe, then we would have to utilize an alternative placement, but, it's up and down. There's some years it's 0, there's some years it's 4, 5, 6. And I don't wanna suggest that for each one of those kids, it's for an entire school year. It's not as though was that gonna be your question? So, you know, it's not like, oh, Jim's being served in this building, you're here for the rest of the year. It's based on the data we collect and when they demonstrate readiness to get back, and then we slowly integrate them back in, and as we see that that's working, then we move them back. So typically, it's not a full year, but for some kids, there's been multiple years that they've been down here because it's been a safe place, and frankly, for some kids, they've liked this experience better because they can predict how their day is gonna go.
I think that's some of the interplay with Bill's question that, I think you're sensitive in your question, I think Joe's been sensitive in his answer, is that part of when we determine that the students need to be moved down here or to the Richardson schools, when they become enough of a concern or a disruption or a safety issue in the building that we feel we need an alternative placement. And so I think what I think Joe was trying to say is, yes, we can find another spot within the district, but we may be moving them back into a building where part of the goal of moving them out of the building was to limit some of those.
Yeah, so the classic example, and I'm gonna look at Jenna when I say this, because Jenna's lived this, Amy lived it as a principal too, is, you asked about elementary kids. We've had kids hitting, kicking, spitting, scratching. It's not necessarily uncommon, but that can get to a severity level that becomes highly problematic. But then on top of that, they'll leave the classroom, run into the LMC, and what do they start doing, Jenna?
Throw all the books, essentially they put your
They
school
tear
into
apart
a
the
hold.
building.
Yeah, your school's into a hold where kids can't move
Yeah.
around the building because they've destroyed their area, that's common in space.
And it significantly impacts the learning. So when we explore an option within the other facilities, one of the things we would have to consider is how we would limit their access to the other part of the building, because if they have that access, it really defeats the purpose. And one of the things that I'm sensitive to is that we balance the needs and the rights of students with disabilities with the needs and the rights of other students that deserve to be able to learn in a safe and peaceful environment. And when that's compromised, that's when we have to act. And so it's a challenging issue, but the space has allowed us to navigate it pretty successfully. But I also want to say I fully understand why we're having this conversation. I think it's the right thing to do to talk about it, and I don't pretend that it's going to be an easy decision. But I'm happy to bring back any of the information that you all request so that we can explore further and ultimately decide what you want to do.
Joe, is the building still being used for summer school and or the middle school using it in any way, shape, or form?
Yep, we do use it for summer school a little bit. Todd, we have the PE classes that go downstairs for weight training and.
Yeah, not as much as we used to, because we have enough space at the middle school and we use the high school and Abe Lincoln, but we do have a few classes that meet in here for summer school for the 4 weeks.
Which we could probably figure out if we needed to, right?
That's kind of the situation with the middle school. Middle school does use it for the weight room as well over here, because what it was, their old weight room is kind of more of a fitness room now. So they do have times of the year when they have their fitness classes over here. We'd work around it and find a way around it, but yes, that is true. I think the one other issue, or one other thing I can think that educationally wise that we've used it is, unfortunately, we haven't had any of these in recent years, is if the board has an expulsion and either does an alternative placement or requires the expulsion with services. And oftentimes those expulsion cases may be, drug-related or violence-related, where we don't want them in our regular middle or high school. And so we have, provided that alternative placement education here in the past for those students as well.
Joe, I think I'm down to the last one here. First a comment, when we talk about this being a space for kids that are problematic, it's an eye-opening reminder of what our staff deals with and professionalism. Kudos, we sometimes, we're the outside looking in, we don't realize sometimes what you have to deal with. I just wanted to make that comment.
Appreciate it.
On the expense side, if this building were sold, the investment in audiovisual for streaming the meetings, would that, if we move to a different space, would that require us to invest money in that to be able to continue?
We would need to
stream?
relocate the equipment. I don't know, depends. I think the equipment that was installed here was specific to this space and the way it's set up, but I would think the camera, for example, that's a pretty nice piece of equipment. We would look to reutilize that.
Yeah, we would look to reutilize everything, but it is pretty professionally designed so that the mics pick up as well as inside as well as externally. And so it's not as simple as, I can send Bill over just to move it and stick it in somewhere. We would have to have a company, make sure that if we wanted to continue to offer televised board meetings, that we would have a space that was conducive to it.
If I'm correct, the Launch Collaboration Center, I think that's a pretty high open ceiling, is it not? And so I don't know that these mics would work for that purpose, but certainly anything that we could move over, we certainly would. And like I said before, I think that's the right thing to do regardless of.
I think the follow-up I was looking for, not tonight, is it $1,000 or $10,000? Because we have to keep streaming the meetings wherever we meet.
Good question. Maybe with that,
I would just say, I appreciate getting the information on how much the building's, what we think it's worth, and that's obviously if it sells, right? It's worth what it sells for. And I also think, wondering if we should get like a 10-year look back, like here's the number of students we've had, here's on average, here's what we think it might be. And I'd also really like, I think you're right, you and your staff deal with all the kids on a daily basis. And so I'd really be looking for what do you recommend? Like, do you think it's doable to sell this building, and would you make a recommendation to sell it? Or would you say like, hey, and you don't have to do that tonight, but as you look at the information, or would your recommendation be this is something that we need to be able to continue to provide services to students?
Just a couple of things, and just, I would totally agree with what Teresa had said as far as numbers and different things like that. I think that is something I definitely would like to see, maybe just an average per se, if you would, over the last 5 or 6 years of how many times it had to be here. And then also, I'm assuming we would have some students that would come here, and if it kept getting worse and worse, that they would then be sent to, say, the Richardson at that time. I don't know, am I correct on that?
Yeah, it's happened twice previously, and with one of those situations, we pulled a student back because it was not meeting his needs and the family was concerned. And then with the other, he went to another facility up in La Crosse because there were some challenges. And the Richardson School does a really tough job. It's hard to find people that are willing to do that work, and we're fortunate that there are folks out there that will do it. But I always felt, for me personally, that if we had to send a student away, that was somehow a failure on our part, that we weren't able to do the job, and that was hard. And so we tried to limit it. But certainly, Donna had a situation with a student that cared about love, but just his needs were beyond what we could handle, and we had to make that decision. And so, yeah, I certainly can go back and run the numbers and get you guys some averages as what that's looked like over the last several years and go from there.
And the other thing, you're thinking too, I myself, I certainly would not want to see them in an elementary school. I mean, I know we have some extra room in Abe. That would be one of the things that would come to mind anyway, that's a facility. But to take someone potentially that could cause harm and put them in a spot where you have elementary kids, I just think that would be an absolute terrible decision. I wouldn't even want to think about it. And it'd be the same thing, no matter where you were put them. I mean, they were taken out of the classroom for that reason. And what I'm wondering is there a possibility we could look around the community itself? And yeah, we wouldn't own this building, but if we have a spot that we could rent per se, and I'm just throwing an option out, on a as-needed basis, I'm assuming we can probably have some idea of students that are coming in, say at a semester break or something, and I don't know with you, Amy, you might have some idea, if you have, potentially, we've heard rumors that people are coming in, people have called. We could have some situations here, okay, is there a facility around, and just throwing things out, hospital, something like that, if they had extra rooms or things like that, that we would be able to use, that again, they would be agreeable to, and if we have to rent or whatever, okay. But we wouldn't be locked into the maintenance or anything of this facility, and then again, also wouldn't have to send them away.
Yeah.
Just some thoughts, I don't know.
It's good thinking. I know there are some school districts that occasionally will do that, will rent space when necessary. I think, unfortunately, it's not always as predictable as.
And I understand that, right.
And so, and when you have parents that are saying, these are our rights, you have to provide programming right now, that can be challenging, but certainly we're willing to consider all options. Like I said before, completely understand the need to have this conversation, and I just thank the board for having this discussion in open session here so the community can understand, you know, the level to which we're considering ways in which we can save dollars because things are that tight right now and it's necessary for us to do as a school district.
Just one quick point to kind of play off that statement is the real savings here isn't $600,000. It's $14,100 a year. This doesn't eliminate our problem at all. If we sold this building, it's a one-time $600,000 cash inflow, but we're only saving $14,000 annually, so we still have the major budget problem that exists, right? So this doesn't change how we look at a referendum. It doesn't change how we have to look at potential cuts to save our money long-term. Ron, maybe you can.
All right, so I 100% concur, that's very well said. It's a one-time infusion of some dollars, doesn't really change any of the math on the referendum because, again, we have that ongoing annual need for the referendum that this doesn't even, you know, put a dent in, you know, puts maybe a dent in the start of 1 year, but not on an ongoing basis. And so, yeah, it's really the savings of that 14,000 is really the true ongoing math that you have to look at. It's all
It would
safe.
probably be a little more than the 20, it would probably be closer to the 20,000, I'm thinking, because there's nothing in here for insurance. I don't know what they pay for insurance on this building, and there's nothing for the, like, cleaning. I don't know how many hours a custodian spends over here in a week.
It varies depending on how many kids we got, right?
Not
Yeah.
a lot. But, I mean, I think it would be more than the 14,000 that's stated. And the question I had, Ron, if we were to sell this building, could we take those funds, whatever it would amount to, and to restore some of the fund balance? Because I know for the referendum is not gonna restore any of that money.
That would most likely be my recommendation as to what you would do with those funds. Again, as Mike said, it doesn't really put much of a dent into the actual deficit that we have, and whether you're offsetting reductions or offsetting the referendum, it really doesn't put a dent or into those numbers. So what I would suggest, and what you just stated, Steve, is that you would use those dollars to help reinstate some of the fund balance reduction that we've had in the last 2 years, to help, you know, offset the potential of short-term cash flow borrowing. And so, you know, it may help save some dollars if it can keep us out of the short-term cash flow borrowing situation.
I just want to say, I'm gonna move us on unless there's any burning final thoughts. So, thank you both to administration and to board members for just kind of helping us break out of, you know, it can be easy to get into the status quo mode here, right? And just, thanks to board members for lifting up a different idea with some financial promise, and for administration being open to it. It sounds like we got a good next step. There's not enough financial benefit and kind of limited risk to press the gas on this right now, but we got enough to further explore, maybe come back with some more data, some more options for us to consider. We're making a really big decision. So thanks again to administration and board members for navigating this conversation that we have. Okay, moving on. We've got, like I was starting to say, my false start. We've got 2 action items in 8E and 8F to authorize the referendum to go on the ballot. Before we do that, given that it's been about a month since the last time we were all in this room, I thought it made sense to kind of give the administration a chance to recap their thinking behind their recommendation, but then also give us a chance as a board after that to kind of, you know, I'll recap a bit for us, kind of what my sense was from the previous conversation that we had, give anyone a chance to share further thoughts, questions they have before we move on to the action that we need to take. So that's 8D. We're going to start on the administration side. Joe and Ron, take it away.
Yep. Heather, if you would, could you put that presentation up on the board for us, please? Thanks. So basically what we have here is a concise version of the presentation that was provided about a month ago. The idea here is just to hit the broad strokes and remind people what it was that we discussed, and then certainly if there are any questions, we're all happy to answer any questions that you have. I'll just start out, and Jim kind of touched on this. This is a tough situation. There's a lot that goes into this process. It's very complex. It's not only about dollars and cents, but it's about people, careers, lives, community members, what they're able to afford. And so we take all of that very seriously. The first point that we made that's represented here is, and I think, the community has done a really good job of exploring this issue, and not just in Monroe, but in multiple communities across the state. They're starting to realize that this is truly a Wisconsin public school funding issue and not a local fiscal management issue. And so, as we've talked about more times than I can count, this is really about revenue limits and limiting the combined amount of operating property tax and general aid. The visual that's up here shows the gap that's grown since about 2009 in the aid that's been allowed to school districts versus the inflationary costs that have been realized over the last several years. And I think everyone here would agree that the cost of regular household items has gone up, insurance premiums have gone up. It's part of life, and that hits a school district as well, and that's part of what we're facing here. In addition, we have, some lagging special ed funding, and as we just spent a lot of time talking about, that can sometimes be pretty expensive, and we have an obligation to provide those services regardless of the cost. And so some of those things are at play. And then ultimately, the state of Wisconsin has put us in a position where communities have to rely on operating referendums in order to cover the shortfalls that we have. I think one of the most powerful things that I've heard, and I think many others have heard, is that, part of your challenge is that you have a declining enrollment. And in my multiple conversations with State Senator Howard Marklein, he has indicated that this is really his position as well. And one thing that we talked about in the last presentation is that if you take a look at the declining enrollment aid that's been lost, which is basically over the last 5 years, we're down about 200 students. And if you look at the aid that would have been received for those students, it comes to just over $2.2 million in aid that we're no longer receiving. But then you contrast that with the reductions that have been made in the district over the last 4 years, and we've saved over $2.4 million. It's important to note that while other districts may not be taking those steps, the school district of Monroe has absolutely recognized that we have a declining enrollment and we have an obligation to make operational reductions in order to address those. Despite that action and that smart fiscal management, there's still some needs that exist, again, going back to the public school funding model. And then when we had a referendum that failed last fall, would have been the fall of 2024 now. I guess we're in the new year. That created a challenge for us because we were receiving $1.5 million annually in a non-recurring referendum to support our needs. So all those combined add up to some challenges for our budget, which is why we have to look at a potential budget reduction plan as it relates to our operations going forward. Heather, if we could go to the next slide.
One quick clarification.
Sure.
The $2.2 million reduction is actually in revenue limit authority, which is a combination of state aid and or the ability to tax locally. So that's one thing. We think of it as state funding. It's really the authority we have to either raise taxes and or get money from the state in a case of aid.
Thanks, Ron. Appreciate that. So we talked about a number of things at our last meeting, but ultimately it took us to the reduction plan. And one point that we try to make is that this plan, for the most part, is only necessary if the referendum fails on April 7th. But there are some pieces that will be a part of the reduction plan regardless of the outcome. What you see here is the elementary level reductions. Previously, we talked about a 3-2-1 model, which would mean that we would have to go to 3 sections per grade level at Northside, 2 sections per grade level at Parkside, and then maintaining 1 section per grade level at Abraham Lincoln. These are the reductions that we've identified, and they include an administrative position, 2 encore teachers, 6 core teachers, K through 5, an intervention specialist, and 2.5 in part-time custodial positions. That comes out to almost $1.1 million. As we go to the next slide, at the secondary level, we're looking at 4 core teachers, I'm gonna look through the glare here, for both ELA, math, science, and social studies across the middle school and high school. We have 3 encore teachers and 2 at-risk intervention specialists at the high school, for a total of 9 positions and $855,000 of savings annually. Moving on to the next slide. And then we would also have the elimination of the AV Center, which we have our AV Center director there. That would result in savings of $105,000 annually. And when you add all that up, that's 22.5 positions, just over $2 million of annual savings. And that's a lot. I just quickly went through it. Please don't take my brevity for a lack of sensitivity. There's a lot of good people that are affected by that do incredible, important work. The reality is, given the budget situation that we're in, it's something that we have to consider if the referendum fails. Going on to the next slide. Most of this is what you saw previously, but there is an addition. At the elementary, regardless of the referendum outcome, we believe that we can reduce 2 to 3 teacher positions, and that's because we're looking at the enrollment numbers at those grade levels and looking to make sure that we're offering class sizes that are fair and appropriate in order to serve kids, but aren't also so low that we lose the efficiency that's necessary in order to maintain fiscal responsibility. So in other words, at certain 2 to 3 grade levels, we're still looking at how one grade level is playing out. We believe we can make reductions there because the numbers are so low that we can afford to make that decision. At the middle school, the family and consumer sciences teacher, as we just heard tonight, Melody's retiring. So that allows us to move the current FACE teacher from the middle school, Kennedy, up to, Kennedy Eggers is the teacher, move her up to the high school position, and then ultimately eliminate that as an elective option at the middle school. So there's significant savings there. And then highlighted in yellow, one thing that we've been looking at over the last several weeks is we've looked at our science numbers at the high school, and after further analysis, we believe that we can make a reduction there because we do have some science classes that have some pretty low numbers, and we had to take some time to look at how we might move things around in a manner that wouldn't necessarily result in us losing some offerings. I think what it does is potentially we won't be able to offer some of those courses as frequently as we currently do, but they'll still be available, and ultimately that allows us to make that reduction as well. So depending on how that shakes out at the elementary level, we're confident that we can make $380,000 to $475,000 worth of reductions, even if the referendum passes. And just so everyone knows, that's something that we do on an ongoing basis. We're currently looking at opportunities, looking at numbers. When there is attrition, such as someone retiring or resigning, if it makes sense for us to make a reduction there, we do that. We don't always talk about it and celebrate it because we're always sensitive to the contributions of people, and we don't want to make it sound as though, Mr. Smith just retired, we're gonna reduce his job and make that person feel as though it wasn't necessary. All of these positions are necessary and incredible contributions to our kids. But again, we're in a tough position, and these are the tough decisions that need to be considered. Going on to the next slide. So we have some resolutions that you all are going to be talking about. The main resolution is listed there, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But ultimately, I feel that the administrative team has worked really hard to identify the reductions that, if necessary, we could live with. But please understand that it will create some significant challenges for our schools, for our staff, and for our kids that, we'll have to navigate going forward. So, Ron, if I missed anything, feel free to jump in.
Well, I think it's good discussion we had. Joe and I have worked with our legal consultants to come up with the official resolutions necessary, both for having a question and then for authorizing the election to ask the question to the community. So based upon the input from the boards at the December meeting.
You fired a couple of questions at you, Joe, on the presentation.
Why stop now, Phil? You've got to
Thanks, Joe. So on the necessary reductions.
Yep.
Regardless of referendum outcome.
Yes.
The professional science teacher MHS, will that, if that happens, will there be an impact on AP class offerings?
Oh, Todd, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, so we would, like Joe referenced earlier, we would probably go on some type of alternating schedule. So like AP Bio might be offered 1 year and then the following year, students could take AP Chem, AP Physics. So we just have to alternate them to make that happen. A lot of districts that are, smaller than us, that's what they offer.
So obviously that creates, it's a scheduling issue, right? And that's where our school counselors have to do a good job of working with kids to understand their path forward and helping them understand what options are available when.
With that, I'm just kind of trying to think how the kids do it. If it's every other year, so it would kind of fall junior, senior year, because of prerequisites, are they able to hit both? And get them both done?
They would be able to take both. They would have to take one their junior year and one their senior year.
Okay, but it still would fit with.
Yep, it just clusters some of those kids together instead of having smaller class sizes.
Sure.
So instead of them taking one or the other and having class sizes of 7, 10, 12, it would put those kids together and they'd be on a similar track.
That'd be a little forethought, obviously, coming from a small district where it was that way. You had to know what path you were taking a little earlier.
Sure, yep.
And that really was our hesitation in initially bringing this forward as a part of that list, was that we liked the flexibility that it gave our kids and families to pursue those options. But the more we dug into it, the more we realized that was a challenge. And given the difficulty of the list that we've put together, it's probably necessary for us to add that to the list of reductions regardless.
So a follow-up to that, the secondary level reductions, if necessary, meaning if the operating referendum does not pass, that will certainly intervention specialists, which is a step backwards from what we've really been working on for the last 2 or 3 years. And most likely will have an impact on AP course offerings.
Yeah, and I want to make a point that we won't offer physics and advanced chemistry in that plan either. So I mentioned those other AP classes. We offer several different science courses, so advanced chem and physics would be 2 that we would take out of the mix. We have very small class sizes right now in those courses.
That's regular physics?
What's that?
That's regular physics?
Regular physics. Yep. So we'd still offer AP physics, but physics is running pretty low class size right now.
Which, I mean, any kid that is looking at an engineering degree at college, they don't have physics on their, I mean, that's not good. Okay.
Yeah, I think you're touching on a point that's worth saying out loud, Phil, which is we're getting to a point now where we have to make decisions about what's required or mandated versus, some of the additional services that we provide, because either we believe it's good that our kids have those opportunities, or it helps kids and families be successful. And, we've heard over the years, people suggest run this place like a business, trim the fat. And we've done exactly that. And any reductions that we're making at this point we're going to feel it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just us, but the kids too.
Yeah.
On the presentation, Joe, on the first page, it says operations budget reduction reductions, how did we get here? This is just a comment, I guess, but am I reading this right, that graph on the right, general school district revenues, is that per pupil? Lag inflation by more than.
Oh, you're teeing Ron up here. This is his favorite
So
thing to
that's
talk about.
With declining enrollment, that's all about per pupil since
2009.
2009. It's $3,380 per pupil less on state aid. That's per pupil, irregardless of what your enrollment's doing, trending up, trending down.
And that's everywhere in the state.
Right.
Yeah, so in our case, that's,
And that's not.
over $7 million a year.
Yeah,
at
I
this
mean, that's not, districts going to the state and say, give us more money. It's just keep up with inflation. That's an oh my God statement, I guess.
So that's as Joe talks about the squeezing and the reductions over time and, people could argue whether some of it was fat or some of it was not fat. It was just, it was a necessity, as costs increase and the allowed increase in the revenue limit have not in any way, shape or form consistently kept up over time. Most years there, you'll see there's some deficit. A few years we might have maintained for a year or two. That's that ongoing squeeze that just forces out a lot of those easy reductions, if there ever were any. We might not have thought they were easy at the time comparatively to where we're at now. They were, to where you get to a point where you just don't have anything at this point in time as people in programs. It's opportunities for kids that go away.
Right. Which is really frustrating because, when Joe, I know you've done this, perhaps you, Ron, I know there's been one or two board members that, back to the public comments we had earlier in the meeting, have visited with state representatives, starting with Mr. Markline. And it seems like this is just falling on deaf ears. So state funding just simply is creating a structural deficit for school districts. And it's putting that squarely on the back of our community and our local taxpayers. Am I wrong?
You're absolutely correct. Literally today in the educational articles that came out, they do a summary every day. There were 2 articles today from superintendents from very differing parts of the state with very differing districts talking about just that point of not only is it that reduction over time and the impact of those, the cost of that over time, but this year it was compounded by the fact that they did not allow any increase in state aid for education. So they allowed revenue limit increase, but no state aid increase. So all of that impact ended up hitting the property taxpayers. Meanwhile, we have the largest state reserve we've ever had. And so the conversation that's out there a bit is not only why haven't we addressed the funding issue, but why are we also seemingly trying to make public education look like we're the bad guys in this? And so it's really starting to create a lot of conversations, Joe said, across the state about, the dynamics that each community is put into of having to deal with these conversations because we haven't systemically addressed it and fixed it at the state level.
So I'm gonna
Can we have, I guess, the discussion in anticipation of the question? Joe just presented that if the referendum fails, we need to cut roughly $2.1 million. However, we're asking for $2.75 million for 4 years. Can you kind of give a summary of why that is?
Yeah, so there's a couple things that come into play there. So obviously, as we project out the costs, we're looking at what the future increases of some of those costs are going to be. So when you make some of those reductions in year 1, which they all would have to be made in year 1, it helps offset some of that increase over time of if we had the referendum and needed to maintain those programs. So that's part of it. Part of it is, we talked about the reductions that would remain, even if we pass a referendum, right? And so some of that is yep, there's dollars in there if we want to maintain everything. But we're always going to be looking for some cost reductions. And so we don't know what that means in year 2, 3, and 4 yet. So we have to project out the referendum as if we're keeping the programs we have, and we can't factor that in. The other thing that the board really worked through last month was looking at that deficit grows every year, right? Over time, that deficit that Phil just referenced has grown since 2009, and the path just keeps getting wider. And so when we look at our deficit, even over the next 4 years, in years 3 and 4, it's much more than it is in years 1 and 2, because it just, you keep falling further behind. And so one thing the board discussed last month was by trying to make the question as, because referendum questions are never easy, right? There's legal language in there, it's complex. And the thought was, rather than looking at a stepped-in approach where the numbers change every year or increase every year, let's do a set number amount, which we've ran questions both ways in the past with operating referendums. And so at 275, we may have a little extra in year 1 and 2 that we can bank to help pay for years 3 and 4. Otherwise, we would have had to have a stepped increasing number each year going forward for those 4 years.
And so if a referendum does not pass, we'd look at this cut this year, we'd have to look at additional cuts next year. to
Yeah,
continue
most
the balanced
likely.
Budget or a different referendum question next year.
Exactly, yes. Thank you.
So I'll just, a couple notes on the process, kind of where we've been as a board. And then I guess my attempt to summarize what happened last time, and then I'll open it up for discussion from the board before we move into voting on the action items here. And of course, this process goes much further back, but administration brought us a proposed reduction list earlier in the fall. In November, then we had that chance to review that in open session and give Ron and Joe feedback on what we wanted them to bring to us by way of a recommendation for what the referendum question would be. Then in December, we had, I think, a lengthy discussion. They gave us a chance to kind of weigh out how, based on the financial realities, based on the programmatic realities and implications, what did we think was the right amount to pursue? And so what we landed at in December was $2.75 million per year for 4 years, which is what we're weighing out tonight. Two other thoughts that just stuck out to me. The phrase middle ground is what I feel like is where we landed at last meeting, and in a couple of different ways. We've heard feedback from all kinds of folks in our communities, both in formal listening sessions, but also in conversations as board members. Both voices from folks who are saying, hey, the tax impact of anything near this, or certainly more, is just feels incredibly hard to stomach. At the same time, we've heard a lot of feedback from parents, from staff, from other community members that reductions we've made already have been painful. And so we are not asking for everything that we would like, but we feel like this is a good balance that is going to put us in a sound financial position. And secondly, I think to continue what has been a pretty phenomenal return on investment for Monroe taxpayers. And sure, I know there's a lot of conversation about macro trends and staff going up and enrollment going down, but that is not the reality of Monroe, right? So we have adjusted our budget based on the enrollment change that we have seen. And if you compare us to almost any district in a 100-mile radius, we are spending less money, referendum dollar per pupil, and we, as of our report card from this year, are the second fastest improving school district in the state of Wisconsin. That is a strong return on investment. So for us to continue that momentum, this is the number that we landed on by finding a middle ground that didn't get us everything that we want. It's certainly not restoring the millions of dollars we've already cut over the past 4 years, But of course, has us landing in the place that we are now. That's my attempt to summarize where I think the board landed after a lengthy discussion in December. I want to pause and give folks a chance to bring to light any further opinions or questions that you might have before we move on to taking action.
Jim, I'll just throw it out there that I was the one at the meeting last time that did vote no because I wanted to ask for more. Like you said, there's been, feedback from our community that we're already cutting, we're already working hard, and we're not probably asking for enough to cover what we need. So I understand that we need this referendum to pass. I can't even imagine this other scenario and what will happen. So if the 2.75 million gets us that, then, I'm definitely in support of that, but I do want it known we should ask for more.
No, you summarized it well. I mean, it's kind of a no-win situation, but.
Okay. With that, let's move on to our action items. And maybe, Ron or Joe, could you give a little background on why these are two separate?
Yeah, so basically it's a legislative, statute-driven process. And so, step one is, the board has to authorize, asking for an amount to exceed the revenue limit. So that's the first part of the process. And so that's the question, or, it's not the question that appears in ballots, but that's basically laying out the resolution of what you're asking for. It's, in this case, it's a non-recurring referendum for 4 years, at 2.75 million per year. And then the second resolution is to authorize us to have the election so that we can actually ask the question to the community. And so that provides us either the authority or does not provide us the authority. So it's kind of implied that it's all the same thing, but statutorily, there's two resolutions necessary. One, what are we asking for? And then two, giving the authorization to have the referendum election to ask the question to the community.
With that background, I would entertain a motion to approve a resolution for an April 7th, 4-year non-recurring referendum in the amount of $2,750,000 per year for staffing and operational expenses as presented by administration.
So moved.
Motion by Terry, second by Phil. Any discussion?
I couldn't really articulate it quickly enough for the previous discussion, but, I think it's clear that some people in our community are gonna struggle with this, right, with this level of ask. But I think as a board, kind of to what you've said, we're really balancing fiscal responsibility with meeting the needs of the students in the district. So I appreciate on the other end of the table that, some people want more, right? And I appreciate that a lot of our communities say that we can't afford this. So it's a really tough position that the district and the board is in, and we're really trying to balance that. My son at home watching this is probably going 6-7 right now.
I thought
So-
it.
Me too.
I think the other thing too, Mike, if I could, just to tie into that, is that it's not only that, you have both sides there, but we're also trying to balance the state mandates. The money doesn't come in, but we're still mandated, we have to do a certain amount of things. Whether we like it or not, we have to do it. So, if it doesn't pass, okay, fine, but we still have those things that we have to. We don't have a choice, so, it's definitely a balancing act. So,
Appreciate it. All right, Nikki, please call the roll. Yes, sir.
What? It's just voice vote. If you want me to do a roll call, I can.
We can do voice. Okay. You got a motion by Terry, second by Phil. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries 9-0. Next up, I would entertain a motion to approve a resolution providing for a referendum election on the question of the approval of a resolution authorizing the school district budget to exceed revenue limit by $2,750,000 per year for 4 years for non-recurring expenses.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Nikki, second by Terry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay, on to informational items. Administration, anything?
Yeah, I have a couple quick things. Given the timing of this board meeting, we held it a week early. We will have to have a special meeting to select the ballot order for Board of Education candidates. The deadline for those candidates to submit their candidacy is tomorrow afternoon. So we're planning on Monday, January 12th at 9 a.m. To hold a special meeting to select the order of the candidates. That information will be posted publicly, so anyone that wants to have the thrill of coming and watching that order to be selected can do so, but it'll be a relatively brief meeting. Nikki plans to be in attendance for that.
It's not a full board meeting, it's much like a canvas, so it's Nikki as the clerk and then 2 or 3 witnesses to witness the ballot order drawing as well as inviting all the candidates.
So therefore, we're having it at DAC.
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. And again, that'll be posted, and any candidates that submit their paperwork, they'll be made aware of that as well and invited to attend if they choose to do so. The other thing I had is that we're tentatively planning a community listening session for Tuesday, January 27th at 5:30 PM. We're working out the details. We think it might be held at Northside Elementary, but we need to confirm that. So just wanted to put that on the board's radar, and as we get that nailed down this week, we'll be putting some information out, but that continues our commitment to hold listening sessions at least on a monthly basis going forward, building towards the referendum. January is a busy month, so finding some time that worked was a chore, but we think we got it, and just wanted to make you all aware.
I'm sorry, what time did you say?
5:30 PM is what we're tentatively thinking, but we're gonna finalize everything, and we'll communicate that to the board and the community within the next few days. That's it for me. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. Okay, we got nothing on Board of Ed correspondence. Liaison reports. Nothing. Okay, on to committee reports. Nicole?
EAE, February 3rd.
With the change in our regular board meeting this month, curriculum won't meet in January. We'll just meet again in February.
Thanks. The North, Mike, F. Steve, F. Okay. Anything for, any agenda items for future discussion?
Jim, I was wondering if we could have somebody from the maintenance department look at our facilities that we have now, see if there was any other, where we would put like those special needs kids that we need this space for at the Power Center, and give some kind of recommendation back to the board.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it would be the facilities folks. It would, that's something that Amy and I and the principals will work on.
Or you guys, yeah, I mean, somebody just bring it back to the
Yep,
board. and
I have that on
let us
my,
know that if there's an option somewhere.
absolutely, that's part of my notes here. We'll plan on bringing it back. My plan is to bring it back for the next meeting. If that doesn't work for some reason, be shortly thereafter, but we absolutely will do that.
Okay, got 5 minutes for the press. I don't think we're represented here tonight. Okay. Tonight we've got closed session. So I would look for motion to adjourn into closed session according to Wisconsin statutes 1985 1C for the purpose of discussing administration contract renewal and non-renewal.
So moved.
Motion by Terry, second by Mike. Oh, sorry. And it is 8:35.
And just to be clear, there'll be no action after closed session, so we'll adjourn right out of closed.
All right, Nikki Austin, yes. Jim Curran?
Yes.
Mike Davis? Mike Froseth?
Yes.
Nicole Josephs? Teresa Keen? Steve Mayer? Carrie Montgomery?
Yes.
Phil Vesper?
Yes.
All right, we're closed.
Is everybody?
Thanks for coming.
Hey, how are you?
How you doing?
Not saying you had
Great
to sit in the chair.
Like,
Because they're known to
year
have that issue,
two,
right?
yeah.
My neighbor,
So I was
right?
thinking
If you weren't, she's out.
There might be some ways that we could work together.
Thanks for throwing your.
And you know, Jerry's a good advocate for us.
Yeah, no,
And it's a,
So it's not
wonderful.
wonderful.
In my mind, I'm thinking some reconstruction, justice center.
The sound, I couldn't do it, it just kept.
No, that's good.
Might be a good PR for everybody.
Appreciate that, I'll definitely touch base with you. Certainly.
I'm sure it's easy. You'll find it.
We'll figure it out, so, all right.
Just thought.
Thanks for coming, guys. Thanks, Melissa.
Dave,
Good seeing you.
Make this public comment in every meeting thing. You know what I mean? Let's just start a tradition tonight.
Oh, hi, it's Davis Bowman.
Yeah, Dave's got 5 minutes.
No, this will be quick. Thanks for coming, guys. Good seeing you.
Thanks for being here.
Dave, I'll give you a call tomorrow.
Was healthy right until I hit the. Thanks, Joe. My gate wasn't ready, so I had to sit on the plate for 40 minutes with my nose running.
That's what I'm afraid of playing on Thursday, and I'm not looking forward to it.
You don't know if you needed me? No. So.
You get out of here and go rest.
I did not.
So much.
Scroll down. Thank you for letting me know.
Not that first one, that's so much for him, that, those last couple of big snows were.
You set Dave's stuff yet?
Sounds like Sam. Dave says Saturday, I think. They're gonna have the wake break.
Yeah, you all decide.
And then Sam's like,
That meant a lot to Dan to come back.
I don't wanna speak out of turn, but bids aren't, Dave's bid is on Eric's.
I'm gonna be honest, I was gonna say it's probably. You actually get to
Okay, so great, yeah, I want to see Sarah.
Sarah and I mean, even Dave and Mary, I mean.
Oh, I know.
We used to do stuff at their house.
Okay. Sorry, just trying to help you out. It pulled right off. So I'll just call it
Decide not to run for reelection, you start breaking.
break in the place, yeah.
She went right past me.